Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto is Dragon Champions in another world? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Freedom Guard for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. The birth of the twin swords. The greatest weapon a man can wield is his own heart, mind, body and soul. The weapons of today are merely part of the arsenal. In the world of Dajern. In the times of the ancient past, when the world was young, there were dragons, ancient and majestic beasts of power, magic, and will. They soared through the skies and ruled the lands before them, and conversed with the mortal beings who inhabit the lands. There were two sects of dragons, the holy dragons who valued peace, compassion, wisdom, knowledge, justice, mercy, order, life, creation and freedom, and the chaos dragons who valued power, corruption, greed, hatred, malice, anger, death, slavery, and destruction. These dragons were constantly fighting one another, the holy dragons, hoping to protect all in their charge, while the chaos dragons wanted to conquer, enslave, and consume those the holy dragons protected. The mortal denizens of the world knew this to be the war of the dragon lords, as many dragons on either side sold their lives dearly. They too joined behind these dragons on either side. Some did it for honor, fame, glory, justice, and duty. Others did it for power, knowledge, destruction and worse. The realms protected by the holy dragons were under the stewardship of their most powerful lord, a powerful dragon named Feldrin. He taught many ancient powers to mortals, being the oldest and the first of the holy dragons and their unspoken leader. He too saw mortals under his care to be worthy of protection, and he led his kin into countless battles with their dark brethren to prevent the destruction of all life. Under his teachings, the mortal humans and their fellow neighbors the elves, dwarves, gnomes, and other races of the light made kingdoms of their own lands and considered the holy dragons as their allies and respected the power of the holy dragons in both times of peace and in times of war, though Feldrin and his kin didn't interfere with the affairs of their wards. To allow them to make their own civilizations grow, coming to aid them when the need was great. The realms under the watch of the Chaos Dragons were under the control of their most powerful leader Chorvax. Like Feldrin, he taught many things to the mortals in his realms, being the oldest and first of the Chaos Dragons and their unquestioned master. However, this was where things between the two dragon sides changed, for in the realms of the Chaos Dragons, the beings who live there are forever food, slaves, and worshippers of the Chaos Dragons. Chorvax saw mortals as nothing more than pawns, food, and puppets, and he and his kin fed their power and malice into their subjects without care and twisted the hearts of the beings of their lands to fear them and worship them. Many battles have been fought between the two dragon races and their mortal followers for generations, and it had been a violent and bloody existence. Feldrin decided to call a ceasefire and spoke to Chorvax, and both leaders met in the borderlands. What was spoken between the great dragon lords was unknown, but what was certain was that there would be no true compromise, as both leaders knew that there would be war even if they would all leave and never interfere with the affairs of the beings under their respective charge. Thus the dragon lords each spoke to their kin and decided to create weapons that could be used to determine the outcome of each battle. Feldrin gathered his kin and with all of their power, one of his own metallic claws, and one of his metal scales, they created a sword of great power. The sword was unlike anything any mortal smith could forge, and was made by the holy dragons to be unmatched by mortal means, save by their own power, and that of their dark brethren. Into the sword, they poured portions of their mystic powers, their blood, their beliefs and more. The sword was forged for nearly 3 to 4 years, and with Feldrin's last blessing the weapon was complete. Chorvax gathered his own kin and with all of their power, one of his own metallic fangs, and one of his scales, they too created a sword of great power, and it too was unlike anything that any mortal smith could forge, and was made by the Chaos Dragons to be unequaled by mortal means, save by their own power and that of their holy kin into this sword. They poured portions of their own mystic powers, their blood, their beliefs and more. It took 4 years for the weapon to be completed, and it was so with Chorvax's blessing. Once the weapons were finished, the dragons left the weapons in their most sacred place, and thus they moved aside and allowed their respective mortal followers to seek the weapons out of their own free will. The two swords were wondrous to behold by anyone, and they were soon sought after by many who sought the power of the dragons. But the swords were no mere weapons, they were great reservoirs of magic and power, and were alive. These two swords chose their wielders, and to prove it those deemed worthy by the swords, each bore a mark of the holy and chaos dragons, and the sword would obey only its chosen wielder and master. Those who were able to find the swords, but were not chosen, were unable to wield it in many ways. Those who attempted to wield the holy dragon sword found it to be nearly impossible to lift, as if they were trying to lift a mountain. And those of dark natures and hearts who attempted to wield or touch the holy dragon sword were burned by the mystical wards and enchantments that both chose the wielder and protected the sword from harm. The same could be said for the Chaos Dragon Sword, as it too prevented those who it did not choose to wield it to even lift it off the ground. Those who were of good natures and hearts suffered paralyzing pain and fear once they were hit by the wards and enchantments that guarded the sword. After their forging, the sword saw battle in the hands of various warriors from the two realms, and these battles were climactic in scale to the eyes of mortals, and these were known as the Dragon Champion Wars, and each wielder of either sword was graced with the title of Dragon Champion. In time the swords themselves gained their own names, and while the draconian names for the swords were only spoken by the dragons, who made them, the mortals of each realm made names that would long be remembered. The Holy Dragon Sword was known as Holy Talon, and the Chaos Dragon Sword was known as Death Fang. The swords also took in the essences of those who wielded them, learning from their previous wielders, and bestowing the same abilities to those who they chose to wield them later on in life. And it was said that those dragon champions were granted immortality by the swords in a way, for they were able to live for many years after the forging of both blades. In one final battle, both Holy Talon and Death Fang were wielded by two powerful mages who fought in a land known as the Dragon's Basin. In the final moments of the 5 days battle of swords and magic, the mages slew one another in a maelstrom of mystical energy that would have been immense, and all magic would have been disrupted. However, in a blinding flash of light the battle ended, and both mages were seen dead on the ground, and the swords gone. There was panic in both realms, and many petitioned the dragons to locate the wondrous weapons, but the dragons refused and stated that the time of the Holy Talon and the Death Fang in this world had passed. The maelstrom had somehow sent the swords far beyond even their reach, and as such, only a great feat of power could bring the living swords back. The Dragon Lords knew this, and they decided to watch and wait to see through their magic where the swords had indeed landed. It was in a realm too far away for them to open a gateway for the swords' return, but the higher gods deemed that while the swords were no longer there, they would have roles to play in wherever they landed. And soon, new dragon champions will arise, and the battle will once more be fought between the Holy Talon and the Death Fang, and soon the swords and their wielders would decide the fate of their world in ways that none, not even them, can predict. Awakened Dragon Champion. Thoughts? In Wave Country, Naruto rushed as fast as he could manage in order to reach Inari and Tsunami before the bandits Gato hired to kidnap a hostage. And he knew just who they had in mind. The blonde moved as fast as he could manage as he closed the distance between him and Inari's home. He knew that his team were currently at the bridge that Tizuna was building, and he knew that the ninja known as Zabuza was in the area. He had to finish this quickly before things got even more hectic. Darn it. I hope I make it in time. As he cleared the forest, he then spotted two samurai holding Tsunami hostage, and Inari was shouting at them to release his mother. Naruto was surprised by this. He had fought with Inari before, when the topic of heroes came up a long time ago while they're in the village. Inari thought heroes were fools, and that really pissed him off that the kid was looking at his adopted father that way. But it seemed that the young boy had gathered the courage to stand and fight, as he was doing his level best to tell the two samurai to release his mother, and he was charging right for them. Naruto knew that he only had one chance to get this right as the two men began to attack as he rushed in. Inari. Tsunami screamed out as she tried to stop the two rogue samurai from killing her son, but she was stopped with a blow from doing anything, and she was now unconscious. Inari was feeling great fear and sorrow, but held on as he charged at the men. The brothers were eager to end the brat's life, but to their shock, they found that they only succeeded in cutting a log into 3 pieces. What the heck? A replacement jutsu. The two then turned as they spotted Naruto, who had been able to rescue Tsunami and Inari in them, as the blonde ninja spoke in his usual tone. I made it, sorry about the delay, but heroes always seem to show up late. Inari looked up and saw to his surprise Naruto, who had been able to use a replacement jutsu to take Inari's place, while he and 3 other clones that he had made were able to sneak into the area and free Tsunami and Inari at the last minute. Who the heck are you? The name's Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha to you, One Eye. And I'm going to deal with you right now for trying to kidnap a kind lady like Tsunami and trying to kill her son. Naruto. It's you. Naruto spared a glance at Inari and smiled as the kid stood in awe at what he had been able to do at the last minute. You did great, Inari. When you charged those two, they forgot about your mother, and that allowed me to get out of the way and use a replacement jutsu to save both her and you. I owe you big for that. Inari looked at his mother and found her to be alive and safe, and he felt like crying, but then realized that since Naruto was not with the others, he must have known about the samurai who were coming to kidnap his mother, but how did he know that and make it here? But how did you know these two were coming to kidnap my mother? Naruto recalled what he had seen while in the forest a while back, and which told him that danger was heading Inari's way. I found a really badly wounded boar in the forest a while back, and the area around it was really cut up, and those cuts could only be done with a sword, and the path where all the cutting was done was heading straight for your house. That was really smart of you, Naruto. Blah, blah. Inari turned, and both he and Naruto then faced the two mercenary samurai, who were getting even more annoyed as they reached for their swords once more. It's one of those ninja brats Tazuna hired. Let's deal with him. Inari gasped as the two charged at them as they were still looking. They're coming. Naruto calmly focused and took out a pair of shuriken from his pouch and fired them at the two samurai. Both men then took out their swords and blocked the attacks, and one of them merely taunted Naruto. You'll have to do something else than that, brat. Naruto merely grinned, making them more angry as he replied. I already have. Before the samurai could do anything, the two other clones that Naruto had made before had been able to get the drop on the two samurai, and with powerful kicks to the back of their heads, the two samurai were knocked out like lights. The clones faded and Inari was stunned at the whole thing and looked at Naruto with wide eyes filled with admiration. That was so cool. Just like a real ninja. You twerp. I keep telling you all the time. I am a real ninja, you know. The two shared a great deal of laughs, and afterwards, the two tied up the still unconscious samurai brothers with several coils of rope, and as they took the time to calm down after the battle, Naruto had this weird feeling that someone was calling him. Naruto then spoke to Inari. I guess I should apologize about what I said yesterday. Calling you a coward was pretty low and mean, but now I can say this with pride and honesty, Inari. He placed his hand on Inari's head and replied with his usual smile. You were really brave today. I have no doubt your stepfather and your mother would be really proud of you. Inari felt overwhelmed and once more began to cry, and he was not happy with that as he thought Naruto was going to make fun of him and call him a baby, like those bullies had done in the past. But Naruto was not that kind of person and assured him that it was all right. Naruto then left him in charge as he ran back to help his fellow team members in their battle at the bridge. On the bridge, things were not looking good as Sasuke found himself under heavy attack by Haku, who had somehow conjured up another jutsu that involved ice and water. The fake hunter nin created mirrors of ice that covered Sasuke, and when he tried to break one they didn't break in the least, and before he knew what was happening, Haku unleashed a massive barrage of senbon that cut into him and winded him severely. He had the upper hand at first until Haku pulled out this new jutsu, and he had no way to escape and was wounded considerably. Kakashi tried to step in, but found himself blocked by Zabuza, and Sakura tried to get involved by firing a kunai at Haku, but the apparently skilled ninja caught the weapon and was about ready to attack, but he was suddenly attacked by a shuriken and was knocked out of the mirror he was using. The others looked as a large pillar of smoke appeared, and only two people knew who that was. Sasuke groaned as he knew of only one guy who did such stunts. Arna quit showing off. Haku spoke once more as he now had a gash on his mask due to the shuriken hitting his face. The number one hyperactive knuckle-headed ninja is here, I see. And sure enough, Naruto appeared and was ready for a fight as the smoke cleared. He spoke proudly and got ready with his usual grin. Naruto Uzumaki is here. Believe it. As he got ready to jump into the fray, he took out a kunai and made a direct strike to Haku. He realized that since this guy was the one who controlled the mirror jutsu, he was then one that had to be taken out, that much he knew, but as Naruto closed in, Haku quickly fired several senbon at him. He was able to evade some of them, but got hit hard on the leg. And Zabuza took advantage of that, and Kakashi was stunned as Naruto was injured. The blonde ninja recovered, but quickly gulped once more as Zabuza came at him with his head-cleaving sword at the ready. Naruto. Look out. Now you die, brat. Naruto blocked with his kunai, but the weapon was not enough as the head-cleaving sword had been well made, and weapons such as the kunai were not the best choices to block a weapon of its power and size, as the kunai held on for a moment before being cut and the weapon winded Naruto right on the chest, cutting him deeply. Naruto staggered back as the blood flowed from his wounds. Haku hesitated and was not happy. He wanted to fight Naruto head-on, but Zabuza was in a hurry and he couldn't go against the only man to give him purpose. Zabuza smirked a bit and replied. You've run out of road in life, brat, see you at the end. But that Zabuza kicked Naruto in the stomach and sent him into the waters below with a splash, and he turned and faced Kakashi, who gave out a very icy glare. How dare you? You want to avenge that brat, Kakashi? Then come and get me and watch as Haku takes out the other one. Sakura gasped at the sight of Naruto falling into the water with a wound. She might not like him, but he was her team after all, and now he must be dead. She forced herself to calm down and focus on defending Tazuna, though she swore that she would pray for her teammate once she had a chance. Unknown to them all. As Naruto fell deeper into the water, knocked back into the ocean from Zabuza's strike, he felt the cold waters, and he felt his life beginning to weaken, and he continued to fall into the water. Am I dying? Naruto opened his eyes and found himself in deep water, and there were fishes swimming, and for a moment a vision hit his mind, the image of a strange sword that seemed to be of pure evil, as if it was purely made from evil. He then saw himself but different, the whisker marks were there, but he seemed older, more seasoned, and holding a sword, wearing strange clothes with a symbol of some beast with wings on the clothes. And a strange white tattoo on his arm. He looked about as much as he could manage, and then he saw something. As his wounds were still beating from the strike, he managed to barely deflect. He wasn't sure, but it appeared to some sort of weapon in a sheath like a sword, and it was buried in a large boulder underneath the waters. But it was different, though he couldn't see it for real. His vision began to fade, but the number one hyperactive knuckled-headed ninja of Konoha was not about to die here and now. No. I've made it this far. I will become Hokage. I refuse to die. Naruto tried to move as the sword was now within reach, and for a second, he touched it. I won't give up my dream. I want to live. Naruto suddenly felt a sensation flooding his body, but it was not a deadly sensation, but warm, calming, soothing, and empowering, unlike anything he had ever felt before in his entire life. It didn't even compare to the chakra that he summoned on a few occasions, but something older, more unique. It was then that he heard a voice in the darkness. What do you live for? Naruto was unsure of what the voice wanted for him to say. But no matter what, he was not going to back down, and he replied. I live to accomplish my dream. Dream? What is it you dream to be, boy? I dream to be Hokage someday, so I will be recognized by the people in my village. And my name is Naruto Uzumaki, not boy. Why do you wish to be Hokage, Naruto Uzumaki? So I can finally prove to the villagers that I'm not a demon. That I can be the greatest ninja the village ever had. Is that all you want? Do you not have others to care for and protect? Naruto then recalled Iruka, the only man who treated him with kindness in the academy, the third Hokage, who despite him butting heads with, was the closest thing to a grandfather he had, his friend Konohamaru. He recalled Tuchi and Aim, the two who worked in the ramen stand that he frequented. He thought of his teammates, Sakura, his sensei Kakashi, and even if he wouldn't want to admit it, Sasuke. He would not give up on Sakura despite her actions towards him. He wanted to prove to Kakashi that he could be as good or even better than Sasuke. And he wanted to prove to Sasuke that he could be stronger than him. The voice was silent, and Naruto wondered if it decided to leave him alone, but it came back in the same tone as before, but he spotted a deep blue glint before him. You do have those you wish to protect. Will you defend them with all that you are? Of course I will. I am a ninja of Konoha and they are important to me. Important enough for you to risk your very life. Will you fight with every fiber of your being to defend them, even if you must face death itself? They are worth everything to me and they are important enough for me to fight no matter what. I will fight with every bit of my skill and soul to defend them. And I will not die until I do that and become Hokage. The blonde ninja then saw the glow become larger and brighter than any light he had seen, and as soon as the light faded, he gasped as he saw a sword, unlike any sword he had ever seen before in his days in the academy. It had two edges and the blade was at 3 feet in length, and it had strange markings on the middle, and there were small gems on the middle as well in regular intervals, and the base was surrounded by two strange serpent-like beasts that then covered the flat of the blade on either side. The handguard was made in a way that the handguard resembled bat-like wings, with two sharp prongs moving upward. There appeared to some sort of gem under a metal sheath on the middle of the guard, and the handle was covered in a scale-like pattern, like that of a snake or any reptile, and the handle was good for either a single or double-handed grip. The end of the handle had another one of the serpent heads with its jaws open, and a beautiful gem that seemed to shimmer in different colors of the rainbow. The blade itself was made of a metal that seemed to glow with a silvery white light, mixed with gold tint. The hand grip was also made from pure gold or something that resembled gold. And the handle itself seemed to be made out of another silvery metal inlaid with gold leaf. The weapon was beautiful, and it seemed to call to him as he reached out, and when his hands gripped the sword handle, the voice once more spoke as the covered jewel on the middle of the hand grip opened like an eye, and a glowing white stone appeared. You have been deemed worthy, Naruto Uzumaki. I shall be your ally, brother in arms, and protector to the very end of your days. I am the Holy Dragon Sword, known to your race as the Holy Talon, and you are now more than a ninja of Konoha. What do you mean by that? What am I now? The Dragon Champion. Back on the bridge. Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura tensed as they got ready to face Abusa and Haku. The missing nin from the water country got his head cutter sword ready, and Hawk, who had revealed his secret bloodline, got ready to finish Sasuke off with a barrage of senbon. Kakashi kept himself ready to fight, though his Sharingan was still being disabled by the mist. Sakura stayed close to help Kakashi and protect Azuna, while Sasuke bit back the pain and got to his feet. They were so focused on each other that it was not surprising that all of them were suddenly stunned to feel a massive explosion of chakra and a type of energy that none of them had ever felt before. It was like an explosion of energy that blinded and overwhelmed their senses in a heartbeat. Haku halted his attack, and so did Sasuke as they tried to look for the source of such immense chakra. Sakura tried her best to find out where the chakra was coming from. Even Zabuza and Kakashi tore their attention from one another and searched for the chakra source. What is that chakra? It's massive. Sasuke thought as he looked as best he could despite the mirrors surrounding him. Such power, pure unadulterated power, it's like an unending wave of energy. Where could that be coming from? I've never felt anything like it before. Haku thought as he tried to search for the source. It's certainly not the Kyuubi's chakra, it's different, very different and more powerful. Kakashi thought as he searched for its possible location. That power, it's unlike anything I have felt in my travels since my failed attempt to kill the Mizukage, it even surpasses Haku's chakra. Zabuza said as he had this very uneasy feeling ever since the chakra explosion. That level of chakra is impossible. What or who could possibly make that much power? Sakura thought as she too felt the chakra. She was unsure if it was a threat or an ally. They all got their answer as a massive geyser of water exploded from the side, the very same side of the bridge where Naruto had fallen after Zabuza had attacked him. The water seemed to tingle, as if it too was alive, and as the water fell back, they were all stunned to see a massive beast made out of pure light appear before them. It defied anything that they all had heard of, and it seemed to look down, and then it spread what appeared to be wings, and as it began to fade, someone leaped out from the light and landed on the bridge. The new figure stood up, and the orange and blue jumpsuit gave it away. Naruto. The blonde ninja looked back and he smiled at his team. Sorry I'm late. I had to take a detour. Before Naruto could speak further, Zabuza charged at him with his head-cleaving sword, and from the position of the weapon, the missing mist swordsman planned to end the blonde ninja's life with one blow right for the neck. I don't know how you survived, brat, but I'm going to cleave you and take your head. Naruto looked at Zabuza and then reached behind him and replied in a cool and more confident voice. I hardly think so, Zabuza of the Mist. As Zabuza attacked, there was a loud metallic clang, and the others watched as Naruto produced a sword that, while smaller and less massive than Zabuza's head cutter sword, had blocked the weapon effortlessly, and Naruto was holding it in a two-handed grip. The two tried to push each other back, and Naruto managed to push Zabuza away. The missing nin growled at being stopped and got his sword ready, but when he looked at his sword, he was stunned to find that a portion of the edge was destroyed and cracks had formed on the blade. Impossible. My sword was forged using the strongest metals that could be found, and it has been tempered well sharpened, and reinforced, becoming the deadly weapon it is today. How can it suffer that much damage from that brat sword? Kakashi himself was stunned at the sight. He naturally knew about some of the weapon forging techniques employed by the Mist Swordsman, and to see that strange sword had not only withstood the cutting power of Zabuza's head-cleaving sword, but caused that much damage to it was a sight he was certainly not planning to forget anytime soon. It's unlike any sword I've seen before, and there seems to be a field of chakra almost hard to see around it. Where on earth did Naruto find that thing? The others had no time to waste as Naruto moved in, and the swords clashed once more. However, Zabuza knew that this fight was lost, as there was no way his sword could continue to remain intact if even a glancing blow with that sword that brat wielded could result in this much damage to it. The next blow further tore off an edge from the sword, and more cracks were on the sword. As Naruto was able to force Zabuza back, he turned his attention to Sasuke and saw the extent of his teammates' injuries. He then turned to Zabuza and replied. I guess I can't keep fighting with you right now then, I'll let you and Kakashi-sensei sort this mess out between you two. But that Naruto rushed into the mirrors and was now beside Sasuke, wielding his new sword in the face of Haku and the ice mirrors that he had summoned. Sasuke, however, was from happy with Naruto in the area despite his wounds. He was already able to use the Sharingan and was able to even up the odds at least. He didn't need the Dobe's help, though he wondered just when did he suddenly get this burst of chakra, and where did the sword come from? What are you doing here, you idiot? Naruto turned and gave Sasuke a glare of disbelief. I came here to help you get out of this mess, and this is the thanks I get. Now we're both trapped in here, Naruto. I noticed, then let's not waste time arguing, and find a way out of here then. Let me help with those blasted senbon, you look like a pincushion. Naruto felt an energy surge flow from the sword known as the Holy Talon, and it glowed with a silvery green light, and he then felt an urge to touch the blade, and when he did so, the silvery green flame covered his left hand with no harmful effect, and he then placed his free left hand on Sasuke, and the Uchiha survivor watched as the green flame surrounded him. But instead of hurting him, the flames were harmless, and to his astonishment, the senbon that had hit him were forced out, and his body was healed. Where there were cuts and piercings before, there was only whole flesh now as the flame faded. That was impossible, that was like a medical jutsu, but unlike anything I've seen before. He healed all my wounds with sword's green and silver flame. What kind of power was that? Naruto was also astonished at that power, but put that aside as he faced the mirrors that were before them, not wanting to get distracted and getting hit from behind by the ninja before him and Sasuke. He took a defensive posture and got ready to fight, while Sasuke managed to fight back his shock and got into defensive position. Zabuza however knew that after all that he has seen, there was no way either he or Haku could beat this ninja team. The Sharingan user was a bit of a problem, but Haku could even that up, but that brat that he thought he had killed now was a big factor that he was not in the mood to face at this point in time, as much as he wanted to settle accounts with Kakashi and his team. He would have no chance to win this fight, and while it galled him, the demon Zabuza, he had no choice but to retreat. Haku? We're breaking off from this battle. Haku was surprised, but understood his master's words as he too had doubts that he could win this fight easily after sensing the immeasurable chakra that Naruto was giving out when he reappeared, his attacks that nearly destroyed Zabuza's own sword, and his new ability to heal wounds with that flame from the sword he carried. He felt that fighting the blonde was not the best of plans. He turned and moved away from the mirrors and faced the two ninja. It seems you both have won this round, but I have a feeling that we shall face one another again someday. Until then you both had better be ready. I will not forget either of you, especially you, Naruto-kun. Zabuza then placed back his head-cleaving sword and the two vanished, and with that, the mist jutsu that Zabuza used faded as well, along with Haku's ice mirrors. The mission mist swordsman then spoke to the others. I guess this is one fight I will not forget. Make no mistake, Kakashi, I will come back and settle accounts with you. As for you with the sword, I don't know where you got that weapon or what it is, but don't make the mistake of thinking that just because I am leaving doesn't mean I've forgotten my promise to take your head. And when I do, that sword of yours will be destroyed. With that, both Zabuza and Haku left the scene, and this allowed Team 7 to relax a bit, and so did Naruto as he relaxed his grip on the sword and placed it on his back, where the sheath quickly covered the weapon. This was not unnoticed by the others as Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke approached their fellow team member. Hey Dobe, where did you get that sword? Naruto reached out and took the sword from his back and with it in its sheath. I don't really know, I found it in the water when I fell, and when I touched it, it's kind of hard to describe. Sasuke glared a bit more and wondered just what was going on here, and he wanted to know just where did Naruto suddenly get all that power. If he could find it, it might help him in his plans to avenge his family. He was going to have to keep an eye on his teammate from here on out. Well Naruto, you've really lived up to your reputation as the most surprising ninja candidate to leave the academy, but that still doesn't explain all that chakra that we felt when you came back and what that strange glowing creature was before you came out. What exactly happened down there? Kakashi asked as he examined the young blonde. He was thankful that the boy was not killed, and thankfully the Kyuubi's chakra didn't come out or the seal didn't break, that the events that just happened before him begged for answers. And what kind of sword is that, Naruto? I've never seen anything like it before, and it doesn't match any type of sword I know of in the history books back at the academy. Sakura asked as she too looked at the sword that Naruto had. Naruto shook his head and also answered her question. I wish I knew what kind of sword it was myself, Sakura-chan. I found it buried in the side of a boulder when I fell down into the deeper waters. The really cool thing is, it's almost weightless. What? I'm serious. It's almost like it's totally made of paper or a pen. There's nearly no weight in the whole weapon. Can I try holding it? Sure. Sakura reached out for the sword's handle as Naruto gave it to her, but to her shock and everyone else, the pink-haired Kunoichi yelped out loud as the sword hit the ground with a clang, and she released it. The pink-haired Kunoichi reached for the sword and tried once more to lift the weapon, but she couldn't even begin to lift it as it didn't even move an inch or a millimeter off the ground. After several more attempts, Sakura gave up and glared at Naruto with her hands on her hips. Naruto, you liar. You said this sword had no weight. This thing feels like it weighs almost like a whole building. Kakashi raised an eyebrow at that statement by Sakura, and he too tried to lift the sword. Once he had a good grip, and when he tried to lift it, he too felt like he was trying to lift an entire mountainside with his hands, and after several attempts he himself couldn't lift the weapon. The silver-haired shinobi tried again and afterwards gave up as he released the weapon. It weighs a lot, that's for sure, but that doesn't explain how come you could carry it, and we can't. Can you try lifting it? Naruto nodded and reached out for the sword, and to the amazement of the rest of Team 7, the sword was effortlessly lifted by the blonde ninja, who showed none of the struggle that either Sakura or Kakashi had when they too tried to lift the sword. It was there that Kakashi noted something else and reached out to Naruto's right arm and rolled up the sleeve, and to his shock, he found a tattoo of some great beast with wings that seemed to breathe fire. Where did you get this, Naruto? Naruto looked and he too was surprised to see the tattoo as well, and couldn't help but stare at it. However, the team had no time to waste as they turned and spotted an armed wave of men, and before them appeared to the leader of the whole bunch, a man in a business suit and had a cane, and no doubt was the one responsible for Wave Country's troubles, as Tazuna identified him very quickly. Beto. The man sneered and spoke to them all. I see that Zabuza and his follower didn't do as I asked of them, a pity, since I wasted so much money on him, but then again I can always make more money to reimburse myself for the losses. But until I get rid of you, Tazuna, I can't do that, so I'm going to make one last offer for you two. No deal. You've had your way over my home long enough and I won't stand for it anymore. And what are you going to do, old man? Attack me like your foolish son-in-law did? Do you remember what I did to him after that little incident? I can do the same thing to you, and then the rest of your family as well. You're nothing but threats to me, and threats to my business are the ones I despise the most. Kakashi, however, spoke to Gato with a firm tone. You'll have to get past us first. Ha. You may be a jonin, but you are alone and I am not. I hired all these mercenaries to deal with you and your little team of kids on the off chance that Zabuza failed to keep his part of the bargain, and now that he did, I will be able to finally end this whole mess. Men, if you want to earn your pay, then wipe them out, all of them. Naruto glared at he then took out the sword from the sheath and faced Gato and his men, along with the rest of his team. The mercenaries were all eager for a fight and got all of their weapons ready. But then a loud number of footsteps were heard, and it seemed like an army was heading this way, making Gato confused, and the confusion faded and turned into shock and rage as he spotted Inari and all the villagers, and they were armed with whatever tools and makeshift weapons they could find. The evil tycoon growled and snorted as he spotted the leader of the villagers, as Inari was wearing a helmet and was armed with a crossbow. So you're Tezuna's grandson. And what is this rabble you have with you, your army? You're pathetic, you're nothing but poor folks with tools. Well, my men can beat the tar out of all of you in a heartbeat. I'd like to see them try that. You may have killed my father, but we're no longer your pawns, Gato. We want you out of our village and out of Wave Country now. I've had enough of this. Kill them all. Right. The mercenaries charged forward and Naruto got ready to fight, along with Sakura and Sasuke and Kakashi as well. However, Naruto decided to finally throw his ace in the hole as he made the hand signs and used his trademark jutsu. Page Bushin Jutsu. And like before, there were large numbers of clones that appeared ready to fight, and they too were armed with the same sword as the original Naruto was. This made the mercenaries pause as they saw this, and Kakashi decided to get into the act as well, making his own Kage Bushin to even up the odds a bit more. Even Sasuke got into the act as well. Gato was livid and told the mercenaries to attack, and with the incentive that not only will they be paid by him to do this, but they were free to plunder the village for all the items of worth in it. This was enough to make the mercenaries overcome their fears as they continued to charge. However, unknown to them all, the sword Naruto wielded began to glow faintly, as if it sensed the danger its master was in, and the shielded stone in the handguard opened as the metal covering it opened, and the glowing stone once more appeared like an eye, and Naruto suddenly felt this urge, and he felt something enter his mind like a gentle suggestion. He then decided to follow through and then placed the sword in front of his face, with the flat ends of the sword facing him and the target, and instead of making hand signs as per requested by Jutsus, he began to speak in an alien tongue that got the attention of his team as they had no idea the language that Naruto was uttering. What is Naruto talking about? What kind of language is that dope speaking in? This language certainly doesn't sound familiar, but it seems to be familiar to Naruto. What is it? They got their answer as Naruto raised the sword high and spoke in their tongue and uttered a phrase that seemed to resonate with power and authority, and it was there that they saw the glowing stone that appeared in the handguard of the sword Naruto had. I command you who serve the cause of justice. Arise and fight for me. Bolts of pure golden light shot out of the sword, and to the astonishment of everyone the bolts of light took human forms, and when the lights faded, there were many warriors before the mercenaries. They were all dressed in armor, some wearing plates of overlapping armor. Others wore coats of mental rings and armor plate, and the only feature that showed that they were united was the symbol of the same silver beast that was on Naruto's right arm. The warriors wielded a mixture of weapons, like the mercenaries did, such as swords, spears, maces, hammers, polearms, bows and crossbows. The beings turned to face Naruto, revealing glowing eyes and hidden faces in their helms, and they bowed before him like loyal servants to their master. We are the Knights of Faldrin, we obey the wielder of the Holy Talon, and we will fight for you. The warriors then faced Gato and his mercenaries and brandished their weapons and were moving in strict military formation, and the sight of these warriors appearing stunned everyone on either side. Especially the rest of Team 7 as they each tried to figure out just how did Naruto summon these men. Seeing Naruto use his Kage Bushin jutsu was normal for them, but for someone like Naruto to suddenly summon a small but well-armed army of warriors out of the light that came from the sword he was wielding was something else. When did Naruto learn how to do that? I don't want to admit it, but that was cool. I've never seen Sasuke-kun do that before. Does it have something to do with that sword Naruto found? How could he have found that kind of power? There's no way someone like him who's a goofball and idiot could suddenly have that kind of power. No way. Why does he have that sword? Interesting, that sword is more than it seems. It somehow allowed Naruto the ability to summon a familiar in the same way a summoning jutsu is done, like the way I would have summoned my nin dogs, though those guys are unlike anything I've ever seen before, and Naruto has no blood contract to speak of, let alone made any hand signs to summon them. Only that strange language the Hokage should be told of this once we get back to Konoha. Beto looked on with wide eyes, and so did the mercenaries. The sight of the newly summoned warriors who were very well armed and armored stopped them all cold, seeing that there was no way they could handle fighting not just the ninjas and the villagers, but this new force that came out from the very light made them know of only one option. Mercenaries were the most practical persons in the art of war, and despite being greedy for money and riches, they knew that sometimes you had to retreat in order to find a new source of money and be alive long enough to spend it, and now was one of those times. They all dropped their weapons and ran back into the ship that had brought them here, leaving behind their former boss to face the army that appeared before him all alone, and Geto was angry as hell as he turned and called them nothing but cowards. But the moment he realized that he was all alone, and when he faced the army before him, he found himself being faced by Naruto, who had a grin on his face. "Looks like your boys have changed their minds. I guess that leaves you alone and no one to help you. You brat. Die." Beto took out his cane and revealed a hidden sword, and when he stabbed for Naruto's midsection, the blonde ninja moved with amazing speed and avoided the strike, and with one powerful slash, he brought the holy talon on Geto's cane sword. The weapon was cut cleanly in half by Naruto's own blade, like it was nothing but a piece of soft clay, and Geto gulped as he stumbled and fell flat on his face. He turned and looked to see the holy talon's tip on his neck and Naruto looking at him with contempt. "Your schemes over Geto Wave Country is no longer yours to control. It belongs to the people who truly deserve it, Inari and his fellow villagers. If you ever try to raise another scheme here, I'll take you out personally. That is the only warning you'll get from me." Naruto took away the holy talon and turned to move back with the others, but Geto was not going to give up, as he was not going to lose his only source of income to some brat. He grabbed a fallen spear and charged at Naruto. "Look out, Naruto." The members of Team 7 shouted, along with Inari and the villagers. Naruto, however, had sensed Geto's incoming attack, and with amazing skill and precision for someone who never studied the art of Kenjutsu, he slashed the spear at the rear of the blade head and rendered the weapon useless, and before Geto realized that he was going to die. Naruto was already moving, and only a brief flash of light and sound of steel cutting, something was heard as Naruto held the sword to his side with one hand, showing that he had struck out with a slash. Geto groaned and blood flowed out of his mouth and nose as his shades fell off and he fell to the ground dead. The Nari and the villagers cheered as they saw that Geto was no longer a threat to them all, and Tazuna smiled and looked into the sky and spoke to someone that he knew. "It's over, Kaiser. Geto's gone, and he won't be coming back anytime soon. Your death has been avenged. Tsunami and Inari are safe, and so is the village. Your son's become a man, and he will be a fine man someday, and now our village can finally prosper and grow. And it's all thanks to those ninja there." Naruto looked at Geto's body and sighed and looked away. As much as he knew he had defended himself from the treacherous businessman, it still shocked him that he had just killed a man in combat, but he knew that Geto brought in on himself, and he walked back to the others. He recalled the summoned fighters that he had called forth with the aid of the holy talon, and with his pointing the sword to them, the men returned to their light forms and were absorbed back into the sword, and the glowing eye in the handguard was once more closed in its metal sheath as he walked back to the others as his clones dispersed. A few days later. "You promise you'll come around here someday?" Inari asked Naruto as he and his mom Tsunami and Tazuna, along with several other members of the village, were seeing Naruto, Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi off as they were heading back to Konoha to give their report on the completion of the mission. "Of course I will, Inari, and when I get back, I hope you've become stronger. Who knows, you might even become a ninja like me." Sasuke and Sakura looked on with sweat drops on their heads, while Kakashi gave a sigh and smiled a bit at the idea of two Narutos running about in the village, while Tsunami and Tazuna smiled at the scene. The villagers were also busy recovering from the rule of Geto, who had been buried far away from here. Tazuna was able to finish the bridge, and as they bid farewell to the people of Wave Country, one of the villagers turned to Tazuna. "So what name are you going to give this bridge now that it's already finished?" Tazuna smiled and replied. "I'm going to name it the Great Naruto Bridge." Tsunami couldn't help but laugh lightly at that idea and replied. "That a very good name. It is. I'll wager that it will be very famous like Naruto himself. That name gave us good luck here, and I have no doubts that he's going to be famous someday." As Naruto and the others were moving along the bridge, he was really in a good mood as he knew this was his first success as a ninja in a very long time. "When I get back to Konoha, I'm going to get Iruka-sensei to buy me the largest amounts of ramen he can manage, and I can't wait to tell Konohamaru all of my adventures. He's going to love it." He then turned his attention to the sword and took it out of the sheath that was on his back. It still amazed him on how elegant the weapon was. Sasuke kept his stare elsewhere, but he still wanted no more about that sword, and where others like it could be found, he was deep in thought, so he wasn't able to speak to Sakura. What is it? You want to do something with me once we get back to Konoha?" "Sorry, but I've got some matters to tend to once I get back." "Oh, alright. "Hey Sakura-chan, if you want, I could go with you." Naruto added with his usual grin as he had the sword back on its sheath. Sakura naturally responded in her usual fashion when it involved Naruto. "You idiot. That was a private conversation between me and Sasuke, so butt out." As the team of Konoha ninja moved on, they passed a forest and Naruto recalled something and took off. Kakashi and the others looked at Naruto and decided to follow him, as they found him in the very same clearing that he found the wounded boar, and the ruined area he reached for the creature that he managed to tend without being gored. Kakashi was about to warn him, but they witnessed something remarkable. The trees seemed to come to life and grow branches that had been cut as if they were healing, grass was growing greener and thicker, and Naruto once more used the silver-green flame and placed his sword on the boar's body, and the cuts began to heal, and to the amazement of the others in his team, the boar got up and began to lick Naruto's face like a puppy, instead of attacking him. It was as if the very environment came alive when that sword activated. Naruto laughed and replied, Okay, Mr. Boar, you're happy. I did say I was coming back to get you fixed up, remember?" Naruto got up and placed the sword back as the boar got turned and ran back into the woods, and as the team headed once more for home, Kakashi knew that things were going to get really interesting once they made it back there. To be continued. Author's notes. Well, things are going to be a bit different around here now, isn't it? Now, what exactly is a dragon champion? Dragon champion is the term given to those chosen by the two swords, forged from the leaders of the two dragon races, Faldron and Chorvax, Holy Talon and Death Fang. They embody the mystical, martial, and physical aspects of the two sects of dragons and their power and philosophies. Meaning that in case of the dragon champion who wields Holy Talon is a fighter who protects those who are in danger and seeks out injustice or evil, and punishes them according to the state of their crimes, like a warrior of honor. In the case of the dragon champion who wields Death Fang, the wielder of Death Fang is a fighter who seeks power and strength, regardless of how many lives are either destroyed or lost in the process, or how many victims fall to its blade, and the wielder of Death Fang revels in bloodshed and death. The weapons provide exceptional powers and abilities to their wielders respectively, such as magic, martial skill, and more gained from the powers imbued into the blades, and the essences of the previous dragon champions, who wielded either sword in the past. Naruto had acquired Holy Talon, and as you have read, is chosen as a dragon champion, but that certainly doesn't mean that Death Fang is not far behind. As to who will be chosen as the wielder of death and the, shall we say, the evil dragon champion. The dragon speaks and the Chunin exams begin. Thoughts? Inner Sakura. Holy Talon's voice. Faldron's voice. In Naruto's apartment. Naruto was tired as he ate his ramen for dinner. He and the rest of his team had arrived to Konoha after a day or two on the road. And the moment he was there, he made a beeline for Iruka's home and greeted the Chunin with a grin and told his father figure about his adventures. Iruka smiled brightly, but his smile faded a bit when he saw the sword and was naturally curious as to where Naruto had acquired the weapon, but he had little time to do so, as the blonde was already asking for a chance to eat his favorite ramen. He bid Kakashi farewell and left. He recounted everything, including that weird conversation while eating ramen in the stand, and Iruka was amazed that Naruto had actually come close to being killed, but somehow was brought back to life or fully healed. Even more so, he had faced a missed swordsman and had been able to damage his sword with that weapon on his back. He had asked to hold the sword, but like Sakura and Kakashi before him, the Chunin yelped as he felt the sword, which appeared to be very light in Naruto's hands, suddenly become as heavy as a mountain in his hands, and when he tried to lift the sword after releasing it and failed to lift it, even Am and Tuchi tried, and they too couldn't lift it, and they were amazed as Naruto effortlessly lifted the sword. Naruto was about to tell them about the strange language he had spoken, but had no idea on how he knew how to speak it and the arrival of the strangely armored and well-armed men, but two things happened. He began to get sleepy, and Iruka had been called by the Hokage. He bid his teacher farewell and headed for his apartment, and here he was right now. As he finished his food, he laid the Holy Talon on the side of his bed in its sheath and then took on his usual sleeping clothes and went to sleep. The blonde was unaware that the sword seemed to come alive once more as the gem that formed the pommel began to glow in various colors, and the covered glowing stone once more appeared, though only half open, as the tattoo glowed on Naruto's arm, and a hazy white light surrounded Naruto as he slept. In the Hokage Tower. Are you saying that Naruto was able to fight the missing Ninjabusa and cause severe damage to his sword with 2 strikes? The Sandai asked as he looked at both Kakashi and Iruka. He had been happy that the mission was concluded well, despite the dangers Kakashi's team had landed into. However, the events that surrounded Naruto's sudden acquisition of the unknown sword and the power that it seemingly granted to the blonde child and container of the Kyuubi was certainly something of great interest and concern for the old man, as despite his arguments with the boy, he was like a grandson to the old man, though they were not related by blood like him and Konohamaru. That's correct, sir. I was witness to the whole thing as Naruto damaged Zabuza's sword greatly with only a weak-looking strike, and the sword of the missing nin was nearly destroyed with a second attack, and considering the way that Gato's sword was cut like it was nothing but cloth, I can bet that sword possesses considerable power and strength to do all that, and there is more. More, you say? Yes, Sakura and I tried to lift the sword ourselves after the battle with Zabuza and his accomplice Haku to find out more about it, and a tattoo of a beast we found on Naruto's right arm. When Naruto handed Sakura the sword, however, something unexpected happened. The moment he released the sword and Sakura took hold of it, the weapon suddenly became heavy and fell to the ground out of Sakura's grip, and it was now heavy enough that Sakura was unable to lift it, no matter how many times she tried. She then said that the sword had suddenly taken the weight of an entire building. And when I tried to lift it as well, it was just as heavy, like I was trying to lift a mountainside. But when Naruto held the sword, it was as light as cloth in his hands. I also noted some sort of tattoo on his right arm. It was then that Gato arrived with his mercenaries, just in case Zabuza and Haku failed. And what happened? We were able to get support from the villagers who were armed, and we called our clones to even up the numbers, but Naruto began chanting in some strange dialect I've never heard of before, and that is saying something in itself since I've traveled for a very long time. And then he summoned beams of light that turned into armed and armored warriors that called themselves the Knights of Faldron. They were going to fight for Naruto and faced Gato's men. The mercenaries left and Gato tried to fight Naruto himself, but Naruto disarmed him and gave him a warning. Gato didn't heed it and tried to attack Naruto, forcing Naruto to kill him. Iruka's eyes widened at that statement. Are you saying that Naruto killed someone for real? That certainly does not sound like him. Kakashi nodded at that and spoke. I was surprised myself, but I saw what I saw, and I know that Naruto was certainly not happy with his actions, but it was unavoidable at the time. I take it there's more to this story, Kakashi. The silver-haired ninja, unarmed with a Sharingan, then told them of the little side trip they had taken, and how the sword created a silver-green flame that healed a boar with severe slash wounds, and how the environment seemed alive when the sword was near. Needless to say, both Iruka and Sarutobi were very interested in the sword itself and what effects it had on Naruto. The Hokage thought clear and hard about this, and Iruka then spoke and told him of the events at the ramen stand that he and Naruto frequented, and even told the others of his own failed attempts to lift the sword. Even Tuchi and Am couldn't begin to lift the weapon as well, but just as Kakashi said, the moment Naruto had the sword it was easily lifted. The three men sat down and thought about all these events. The Hokage then spoke and turned to the Chunin and the Jonin. Kakashi, who else knows about Naruto's possession of the sword? Myself, Sakura, and Sasuke, though I have no doubt in my mind Zabuza and Haku are also aware of its existence. Iruka, apart from you, who else in Konoha knows about Naruto's possession of the sword? Tuchi and Am know about it as well. And the name of this sword is? Naruto called it the Holy Talon. The Hokage had a lot to think about, but for now, he had orders for both men. Kakashi, I want you to tell Sakura and Sasuke not to tell anyone about the sword's powers and its abilities when Naruto used it in Wave Country. Make sure that until we know more about this weapon, no mention of this sword will come out to the others in the other teams. The weapon no doubt will make its own presence felt. Make sure Naruto does not use it constantly, for despite the benefits it seems to give him, we can't be sure if there might be side effects that could injure or kill him. I understand. Iruka, I want you to go back to Ichiraku and tell both Tuchi and Am to not tell anyone else about the sword. We can't afford to have the villagers who hate Naruto to try and attack him when they misunderstand why he has that sword. Yes, Lord Hokage. In the meantime, I will be searching our archives for any mention of what this Holy Talon, who made it and why. If we can find out where this sword came from and who forged it, we might get a far better understanding of what happened in Wave Country and why it chose Naruto. In the morning, Kakashi, I want you to tell Naruto to meet me in the practice field where you had the bell test. There we might be able to find out more. Sarutobi then dismissed both men and went to work immediately. He would tell the council in due time, but this was a mystery, and if there was one thing the former shinobi known as the professor liked apart from talking to women, was mysteries. In the Uchiha clan house. The home of the Uchiha clan used to bustle with activity, and even at night there would have been activity of some sort, but not tonight, not after the massacre perpetrated by one of their own. For now only one resident was in the house, one Sasuke Uchiha. The last survivor and heir to the clan searched through his house and gathered all the scrolls that he could find, including the diaries and journals of every ancestor of his clan, in order to find any mention of the Holy Talon. He wanted to know if there were other swords similar to the one his teammate Naruto carried. He had not touched the sword himself and therefore was getting more curious. I need to know what that sword is and who made it. If I am lucky and find a sword with the same powers, like I could finally accomplish my dream apart from rebuilding the clan, killing him. Sasuke tightened his grip on one of the scrolls in an effort to curb his temper. He couldn't afford to get distracted at this point as he began to read the first of many scrolls for the night. The next day, Naruto woke up to the sounds of bird chirping and sunlight filling his room, and as he stretched and yawned, he took off his usual sleeping cap and stretched once more, and that was when he noted something: his clothes seemed tighter for some reason. That's kind of weird, my clothes feel a bit tighter than before. Maybe I put too much detergent when I washed them. Naruto then got out of bed and looked to his side of the bed and smiled to see the holy talent still there in its sheath that appeared to be ebony wood held by silver, gold, and a jade green like metal. He held the sword and took it out and smiled once more as he looked at the blade, and after a few moments, he slid the sword back into its sheath. And went to the bathroom to brush his teeth and face his face. He felt kind of tired for some reason, like he had been in a marathon or something. As he entered the room, the blonde ninja looked at the mirror to see himself, and he commented to himself, "Man, I really need to sleep more, I look huh?" Naruto looked closer at the mirror and blinked his eyes a few times and looked a bit closer, and he then looked back, and when he processed what he was seeing, it didn't take very long for the blonde ninja to react. Aye. Everyone in Konoha who were up and early were stunned out of their wits as the scream was heard. Several of them were looking at the direction of the scream, and some of the ninja on duty to quickly draw their weapons. Even the Hokage was caught off guard when he heard the shout, and he too wondered just what or who caused such a commotion. Back in Naruto's bathroom. What the hell happened to me? Naruto was deep in shock as he looked at the mirror and wide awake as well, and he had very good reason to be shouting as he looked at his face, but wasn't his face at the very same time. What the heck had happened to him? He asked himself that very same question once more as he tried to see if it was indeed his face. He still had the same whisker marks as before, but they seemed more wavy, as if they were more well defined. His face seemed smoother, more angular and more masculine, like all the baby fat that might have been there had been miraculously removed, leaving smooth skin and firm muscle. His face was more well defined. A feature normally found on teen 3 or 4 times his current age, or with men at least the same age as Iruka. It was as if he had somehow gained the face of an older man, though it was far from ugly. It was like that of a handsome full-grown man. He then noted that his hair seemed longer and not so spiky upwards, and the blonde color seemed more golden and had slight silver highlights, not to mention when he turned his head, his hair on the back was longer now, almost reaching the middle of his shoulder blades. He looked at his eyes, they were the same, but the blue color seemed deeper and stronger, and it had a silver edging around the irises as well, but they seemed slightly reptilian-like. He then noted that he seemed a bit taller than before, a few inches, but taller nevertheless. He took a look with his room's measuring ruler and found that he was taller than before, nearly the same height as Sasuke. What the hell is going on here? Did I eat something that made me grow overnight? He looked at himself and noted that his clothes did seem tighter for some reason. He took off the shirt and was stunned to see himself. Something had certainly happened to him last night, since he didn't recall having this kind of body. His arms looked more muscular, but slim and smooth. He tightened his grip and noted that his grip was a lot stronger than before. He felt his arms and noted that his muscles were hard and tough, almost as if he had spent the sum on 12 years in the gym with weights in one night, and the tattoo of that silver beast was more well defined and more elegant looking. He looked at his torso and abdomen and saw that he had well-defined muscles on them too, not too bulky and not too thin, but a well-balanced combination of both. His torso looked smooth, and all the muscles were in the right place and form for his age, though resembling someone who really worked hard. He looked at his abdomen and noted the six-pack he had miraculously developed seemingly overnight, and the seal on his stomach was taut in that same area. When he turned around to look at his back, he also noted the well-matched muscle structure as well. He took off his lower pajamas and noted that his legs looked like that of a gymnast and a runner at the same time, well-formed and well-proportioned muscles all over. He even decided to look into his boxers, and he blushed bright red as he saw his package. He looked himself over and over once more just be sure. He even went as far as to pinch himself repeatedly to make sure he wasn't dreaming, and when he found out that he was not dreaming and wide awakened, and the changes were real, and not henge, he might have used accidentally in his dreams, he couldn't help but once more comment, "What the hell happened to me?" He then got an idea and decided to see if the sudden changes had an effect on his 2 signature jutsus. Page Bushin Jutsu. The blonde ninja summoned 3 clones, and to his absolute shock they too had the same features as he did. It was officially not henge. There was no way he was dreaming all of this. 1. He then decided to see what happened to the personal jutsu that he created a while before, the same one he knocked Abisu, Haruka, and Sarutobi with. Why no jutsu? The blonde transformed into the form he used to stun the men of Konoha on more than one occasion, and wondered if his sudden physical changes affected that form as well, just as his other Kage Bushin clones also used the same jutsu. The second the smoke cleared, Naruto looked at the mirror and his other clones in their Y no Jutsu form, and the only words that came out of his mouth and that of his clones was, "Oh my freaking god." Not only had he changed in his normal form as a boy, but even in his Y no Jutsu, he had gotten substantial changes and emphasis on the word substantial. The hair he had in this henge was no longer in their twin tails, but was in a lush and smooth long tail of golden silk, with the same silver highlights. There were two long tails in the front that framed the face. The face would have been enough to make a man stare at it all day, and even the most beautiful women to take notice, as the face had smooth skin and full red lips, high and well-formed cheekbones, and the eyes were also a deep sapphire blue with silver highlights, enough to entrance a man and make him blush to the point of being a tomato and bleed out buckets worth of blood like a garden hose. He looked at the clones who were in the same Y Jutsu form and studied the forms they had and his own in the mirror. Not only was his Y Jutsu form taller than he recalled, but more shapely and well-formed. The arms were slender but well-formed and defined, the breasts were large and were certainly ample, so to speak, bouncing with natural grace when he moved. But settled gracefully and thrust out proudly when he landed. The hips were well-shaped and perfectly proportioned, the legs were well-formed, long, shapely and slender. The henge he used was now very much womanly indeed, enough to give any of the women here in the village of Konoha a run for their money too. Despite the absolute shock of the whole affair, Naruto had to admit there were a great deal of possibilities that he could pull off with this new and seriously improved Y Jutsu. He didn't even want to guess how the others were going to react when they saw him. As soon as he returned to his normal form and dispersed his clones, he realized that he was supposed to meet up with the rest of his team at the bridge today to get the latest mission. He took out his clothes and grunted a bit as they were a bit tighter than before, and he made a mental note to go and convince the clothes store owner to give him some fresh and better fitting clothes. Once he was dressed, he reached out and took Holy Talon and placed it on his back, and the weapon bonded instantly to him, as if it was held by some invisible belt. Once he was done, he rushed out of his house, and once he talked with his teammates, he was going to head out to the ramen shop and grab something to eat. One imagine him looking a bit like the fourth Hokage when the man was older, and add a dash of Titus of Final Fantasy X, and you've got his new looks. If you want a more visual description of what happened to Naruto's Y Jutsu and what form it's currently in now, well, let me put it this way: if you've seen the anime and manga Tenjo Tenge, then Naruto's enhanced Y Jutsu form resembles a fusion of the Natsume sisters, Maya and Aya, so you can bet your money that it really puts in the term you're right on the dot. At the bridge, Sakura was currently standing on the bridge with Sasuke leaning on the rails. Both of them were waiting for their teammate to show up for the meeting with Kakashi. However, both of them were also deep in thought. Well, one of them was, as Sakura was happy to have some alone time with Sasuke. Sasuke, on the other hand, was cranky and tired. He had searched the scrolls until early morning and still found nothing in his clan's scroll collection that spoke of the Holy Talon or any sword that had the same power as it did. It was as if that was one artifact that none of his clan had ever seen before, and that made him very curious and very frustrated. "Hey, Sakura-chan." Sakura turned and spoke to the only guy she knew who spoke like that. "Naruto. Please don't be late like Kakashi, huh?" Sakura's irritated look was replaced with wide eyes as she gazed at Naruto. She couldn't help but stare as Naruto seemed to have changed overnight, and quite literally at that. She noted the change in height, looks, eyes and even the hair. She couldn't help but look transfixed at the blonde as Naruto greeted her good morning and offered his usual smile, and for some reason she felt like she was going to blush. She fought it down and looked closer. Whoa, what happened to Naruto? He's different. Her inner self, however, had other terms to describe the sight before her. Different? He's not different, girl, he's hot. Who knew he'd look like this in one night? This has to be a trick of some sort. Maybe he's using henge or something. Sakura then placed the proper hand signals and uttered the jutsu designed to dispel henge and jinjutsu. Hi. She opened her eyes and was stunned to see Naruto's new features had not disappeared. There was no henge the blonde ninja was using at the moment, and that really got Sakura surprised as she decided to look closely. She noted that his usual clothes looked tighter, and he seemed taller for some reason. As soon as she was done, she couldn't help but ask, "Naruto, what happened to you?" "I don't know really, I just came back from the ramen shop last night and went to sleep. The next thing I knew I woke up and looked in the mirror in my bathroom, and I was like this." "Are you kidding me, Naruto? No one turns into well this in just one night." "Not that I'm complaining or anything, whoa. Did I just say that?" "Darn right you did, girl." "Well, I did." Sasuke then looked at Naruto, and he ignored Naruto's sudden changes, and Naruto glared back, and the two looked away from one another with a snort, making Sakura worried and depressed. "Oh man, they've acted like this when we got back from Wave Country. I feel like I'm dealing with children all of a sudden." "Arna, Kakashi sensei, get your butt over here." A bit later, The three genin waited and waited, and when they felt like they couldn't wait anymore, the chronically late copycat ninja of Konoha appeared on the top of one of the bridge's archways. "Hey guys, sorry I'm late, I got lost in the path of life." "Liar." Both Naruto and Sakura shouted as Sasuke merely looked on, but also spared a glance at the sword strapped to Naruto's back. It was then that Kakashi noted the sudden changes that Naruto had experienced, and he gave a low whistle. "Well, now you've got a brand new look, Naruto, and you certainly look, well, how should I say this? Impressive. What happened last night to make you change?" "I don't know, Kakashi-sensei, last night I was telling Iruka-sensei about the mission in Wave Country and went home, the next thing I knew I woke and I'm this." "Are you sure you're not using henge or something?" "No. I swear this isn't henge, I even pinched myself 10 times to see if I was sleeping." Sakura then spoke to the Jonin. "Naruto's telling the truth, Kakashi-sensei, I also tried using the release jutsu, but there was no henge to dispel this as Naruto." As he got down, Kakashi examined Naruto more thoroughly, and despite the changes in looks, height and muscle mass, there was no doubt in the former Anbu's mind that this was Naruto, not a clone or in a henge, and if he was in henge, it was a darn good one. "Very interesting, it seems that the sword might have something to do with this. I know I'm just guessing, but I can't think up of any other explanation at the moment." Kakashi then recalled his time with the Hokage yesterday and what he was ordered to tell Naruto. "By the way, Naruto, I managed to have a conference with the Hokage last night in order to tell him about what happened in our mission at Wave Country. He asked that you meet him at the practice field where we had the bell test at one time. He will be meeting you there." "The old man wants to talk to me?" "What for, Kakashi-sensei?" "He had researched on the origin of the sword you have with you, he might be able to find information on where that sword of yours came from and who made it, and he wanted to talk to you about what he might have found. So I suggest you get moving already." "But I want a mission, Kakashi-sensei, and no more missions with mundane stuff, okay? I mean real missions this time, I know I can handle them now." "I bet you do, however, there isn't much in terms of missions right now, so my hands are tied at the moment. But stop wasting time and head off to the practice field." "Is Sakura-chan and well Sasuke coming along?" "No, it's a private conversation between the two of you, only now get going." "Alright then, I'll see you guys later." As Naruto took off to the practice field, the silver-haired Jonin then turned to face the rest of his team and he coughed to gain their attention. The two genin faced Kakashi as he began to speak to them about what the Hokage had told him concerning the events at Wave Country. "I was given some orders from the Hokage to give to the two of you." "Orders from the Hokage himself?" Sasuke raised an eyebrow at that, and that was something of a first actually, while Sakura was also surprised at the words Kakashi was saying. "That's correct, Sasuke, the Hokage has ordered that none of you will talk about what happened at Wave Country, namely with the powers Naruto used in the battles we were in with Zabuza and Haku, and then with Geto and his hired goons. That order will remain in effect until the Hokage learns enough and says otherwise." "Why is that, Kakashi-sensei?" "I can't really get into details at this point, Sakura, but suffice to say what happened in that mission was unprecedented in Konoha's history, and the Hokage is not taking chances. Despite the apparent benefits that Naruto has gained since acquiring that sword known as the Holy Talon, there might be some side effects that we don't know of that can be dangerous to him and might cause him harm, and also the village." "No offense meant, Kakashi-sensei, but why would the Hokage be concerned with what happens to Naruto?" "Well, Sasuke, the Hokage and Naruto have a unique relationship despite his antics. Naruto looks up to the Hokage as grandfather, and while he might not like Naruto's behavior on certain cases, the Sandaime sees him as a grandson as well, in the same league as his own blood grandson. We'll just leave it at that. I need to file my full report to the council as well, so for today, you two have free time on your hands." As Kakashi left to do his duty, Sasuke thought about something and decided to move out. Sakura wondered just where he was going, and so he called out. "Sasuke, where are you going?" "I'm going to take a peek at something." "What do you mean by that? Wait, you plan to soy on the conversation between the Hokage and Naruto?" "Just to figure some details, you don't have to come with me at all, and you should be better off training too." With that, Sasuke took off, leaving Sakura behind, and she wondered whether she should go after Sasuke or get caught. With some misgivings in her heart, Sakura decided to back away for now and take a walk to make sense of what has been happening since the mission. In the practice field. "I see you've made it, Naruto, at least you're not late as Kakashi is." "Nice to see you too, old man." Naruto smiled as he approached the Hokage. He was tempted to reveal his new and seriously improved Jutsu in front of him, but recalled what happened the last time he tried the still unchanged version and decided against it. Sarutobi then noted the differences in Naruto's appearance, and he couldn't help but raise an eyebrow as the sudden changes Naruto had undergone, and he surmised that it might have something to do with that sword he had with him. "I see you've undergone quite some changes, Naruto. I have to admit the new looks caught me by surprise." "I know, and I don't know why it happened at all, it's like it just happened overnight." Do you know why that happened, old man? I can't really give any information, Naruto, but I suspect that your new sword might have something to do with it. The Holy Talon. You mean you found out information about it? I've only made a guess, Naruto, and I'm afraid that even though I've spent the whole night and early morning poring through all of our archives and scrolls, I was not able to find a single mention of the Holy Talon. No mention? Are you saying that the sword's not in the archives? I believe so, however I came to the conclusion that we might find answers from the sword itself. I have a feeling that you might have more details on how you got that sword, Naruto. Now tell me everything that happened there at Wave Country, and from your own perspective this time. Naruto then told him of how he saw the sword and touched it and heard voices talking to him and saying that he was deemed worthy to hold Holy Talon, or rather the Holy Dragon Sword, and he then spoke of what happened afterwards. Sarutobi was naturally surprised by what Naruto told him about the voice he heard that seemed to come from the sword itself. As soon as Naruto was done explaining everything, the elderly leader of Konoha then had an idea. Naruto, I want you to try and speak to that voice once more, considering you appear to be the only one who can wield it properly. It might obey only you, and the voice will respond only to you and your orders. Naruto took out the Holy Talon and looked at it, and he spoke mentally, the same way he had done before with the voice. Can you hear me, Holy Talon? I can hear you, Master Naruto. What is it you wish of me? I want to know who made you, where did you come from, and what exactly are you? I see you wish to know more about my origins and my creators and what I am. Yeah, you didn't exactly tell me everything about yourself, and if what the old man said was true, you have something to do with my new looks. So will you tell me about yourself, Holy Talon? I am afraid I cannot at this point, however I can allow you to speak to my high-ranking master and creator, or at least a manifestation of him. It's not too hard to do. Merely place me into the ground and speak the name the knights mentioned and say the phrase, come forth and speak your lore. I will do the rest. Is that all? Yes. Naruto then broke his speech with the sword and then told Sarutobi what the Holy Talon had told him. Sarutobi considered the ramifications of the statement and decided since this is the best course of action to find answers. He gave Naruto a nod and Naruto went to work and placed the sword into the ground blade first and spoke just as Sasuke was hiding as best he could in the brush and undergrowth. Faldrin, come forth and speak your lore. Who the heck is Faldrin anyway? Those summoned men said that before, so who is this Faldrin? Wait a moment, could he be the creator of that sword? The sword suddenly glowed deep white and a blast of energy was unleashed in a heartbeat that blinded both Sarutobi and Naruto, and even Sasuke had to cover his eyes. The shockwave was felt by all the ninja in Konoha, and some of the other teams were caught off guard as well as they all looked for the source of the sudden energy wave. When the light faded, Naruto, Sarutobi, and Sasuke looked and gasped as they saw the sword was still glowing, but they were for the moment not concerned with the glowing sword, but were more concerned by the thing that appeared. They were now looking at the strangest creature they had ever seen. In simple terms, they were looking at a dragon. But not just any dragon, but a dragon lord. What kind of creature is that? It's monstrous. I've never seen anything like it before in my whole career. That is one big lizard. And with wings no less. The three looked at a creature that was as tall as a 3-story building and was covered in shimmering golden scales that glowed gently in the sun, and the scales were rimmed with silver edges. There were 4 limbs about it, all of them had 5 toes and had razor-sharp metallic-like claws, though one claw in the right forelimb was missing. There was a beast-like elegance and beauty about the creature, and it appeared to have wings that appeared to be folded. It had a long tail with several bony plates on it that tapered into a spear-like tail tip, and a long mane of golden hair with silver mixed into it ran from the base of the tail tip to the back of the head, which was on a long gracefully shaped neck. The head was like that of a reptile, and there was a giant glowing diamond on the forehead on the creature, and a pair of 4 horns on either side that flowed backward. The creature curled its lips upward to reveal rows of very sharp teeth, and its deep rainbow-like eyes were directed solely at Naruto. Sarutobi had no idea what monster this was and quickly took off his Hokage robes and hat and was now in the same outfit that he wore in his youth, and he spoke to Naruto. "Get behind me, Naruto." The creature then opened its mouth and amazingly enough it spoke, and in a royal tone that demanded respect and attention yet in a patient and calm manner. "Peace, elder, I mean you and the boy no harm. There is no need for violence." Sarutobi's eyes widened and Naruto was in awe, and even the normally cool-headed and indifferent Sasuke was stunned out of his mind as he looked at the creature before him. The thing spoke. "What kind of creature is it? Who are you?" Sarutobi asked as he still kept Naruto behind him. He didn't know what this creature was or if his ninja skills could match it, but he would not let any harm come to the blonde as long as he was still alive and breathing. Forgive me, I guess I forgot my manners since it has been a while since I was manifested, however I would like to see the wielder of Holy Talon step forward. Wielder. Naruto didn't know why, but the voice held no threat, anger, or malice, and he stepped away from Sarutobi, despite the misgivings the elder had. As soon as he was before the creature, it moved forward, and Naruto now found himself staring at the creature face to face. He felt great fear and anxiety, hoping that neither would show and get him into trouble with the creature. After a few moments, the creature moved back and gave a grin and spoke. "You are not exactly what I expected to be the new wielder of Holy Talon. Regardless, the sword is wise and foresighted when it came to choosing wielders, even those who appear ordinary. As to who I am Faldrin Dragon, Lord of the Holy Dragons, and Chief Creator of Holy Talon. Though in this case I am only a manifestation, and therefore I cannot last long in the material plane. I see that you have questions. You may ask them now if you both wish, and I will answer them to the best of my ability." Sarutobi was the first to speak. "What exactly is a dragon and why is it you can speak?" "I am not surprised you ask me that question, Elder, since I have sensed that there are no such dragons in your world. We dragons are being born of the earth and magic of the world. We serve as living reservoirs of magic and energy, and as such we have long lifespans, thus we can learn and retain memories at a very large capacity. I have lived for over 25,000 years now, and I am the oldest of my race, and as such, I have learned many tongues apart from my native draconian tongue. I have also learned much in terms of art, history, warfare, combat and more." Naruto then asked the Dragon Lord something. "Faldrin, sir?" "Yes, wielder." "You will eat other beings, like me?" "But gracious no. I find the idea of eating mortal beings such as yourself distasteful and a grievous sin, though I partake in feasting with humans such as yourself in my human disguise. I must admit that your race is quite creative when it comes to feasts. You can become a human. Of course I can take the appearance and form of a human of any age, young wielder, for you see, many of my kin have such a talent and we use it well when the needs suit us, apart from our powers and abilities. We holy dragons love justice, compassion, mercy, life, knowledge, and more, and we preserve peace as best we can, and that is why I am here to talk, not to fight. However, that does not mean we are weak creatures, and we can fight as fiercely and deadly as any fighter. Are there others like you, Faldrin?" "Yes, Elder, I rule several large flights of holy dragons along with my own brood, but we are not the only dragons who exist in our realm." "Really, are they like you as well?" Faldrin looked at Naruto and shook his head. "I am afraid not, wielder. The other race of dragons are not the same, for they follow the path of darkness. We call them the Chaos Dragons. Our respective realms have a very long and difficult history. If you wish I will tell you as much as I can, and then I will explain to you what is Holy Talon." The Dragon Lord then spun a tale before the two and told them the history of their kind and their wars with their dark brethren. "We have been at war with our dark kin for millennia, and for a good reason. Well, my kin and I rule the realms we live in with peace, justice, knowledge, freedom, hope, compassion, mercy, and duty. The Chaos Dragons and their leader Chorvax, who like me is the oldest and wisest of his kin, rule their realms through slavery, corruption, hatred, greed, malice, anger, death, destruction, power, hunger, and evil. They have twisted the minds and hearts of their mortal followers who fear and worship them. They see mortals as pawns, food, and toys to play with to amuse themselves, and not worthy of being treated any better. They sought to do the same to those under our protection, and we have fought back in kind, and many of our kin and theirs have died in these battles that tore the lands and remade them as well. Mortals under our respective realms also fought each other as well. The battles lasted for generations upon generations, and we were tired of the countless slaughters and the battles that were fought between us, them and our respective followers. As such, I called for a ceasefire and spoke to Chorvax in the borderlands. There we realized that there would be no true compromise, even though I had convinced him that while he would revel in the slaughter and death, he would soon wipe out all of his followers, and what sort of empire would he rule if all were dead? Well, we knew that even without our presence, mortals would continue to fight one another. We no longer wished to fight and rip the lands to shreds. So we all found an alternative. I gathered my kin, and with one of my talons and one of my scales, and out combined powers, wills and magic, we created a sword of immense power and poured into it portions of our magic, essences, martial and physical prowess, and our beliefs and philosophies. By the end of 4 years since then, we created the sword, and I blessed it with my blood and fire. I placed the sword in our most sacred place, and mortals who wished to seek it out with pure hearts, souls, and minds were able to wield it. The sword itself was alive, and it was true judge on who would wield it. In time, we gave each successful wielder the title of Dragon Champion, and as you might have guessed, that sword was given a name by those who couldn't speak the draconian tongue, Holy Talon. Naruto was in awe as he looked at the weapon before him and was amazed that the living sword chose him to wield it. Sarutobi then asked another question. What is the Holy Talon capable of? Faldrin began to explain to the Hokage, and Naruto was spellbound at what he had heard. Holy Talon is a living weapon as you already know due to our combined mystical powers and it being part of my body and imbued with my blood, fire and magic, it cannot be chipped, damaged or broken by any mortal means or weapons. No forge known to mortals can break it and it can cleave and slice any other metal like it was nothing but mere clay or cloth and any form of armor can be easily cut with one swipe. As it is filled with magic, which is quite different in nature and application from the energy you know as chakra, it can cast spells and mystical forces that can overpower most if not all foes. Magic can be used to heal, attack, summon, defend, and conjure. It is also able to absorb the essences without harm from each dragon champion that has wielded it in the past. What do you mean by that? I thought Naruto was a dragon champion as you said. That is true, he is a dragon champion, but to be more accurate, he is the first dragon champion of this world, for where it was forged, many warriors of various powers and skills have wielded Holy Talon in battle. When called upon, these essences can fill the current wielder with the power, skill, and knowledge of all previous dragon champions who fought with the Holy Talon in hand. It also has powers to call forth holy dragon allies of various powers. When you call them, the dragons you summon will aid you in whatever venture you wish and will fight with you in battle. Wow. This is so cool. I thank you for letting me the wielder of you Holy Talon. Aldrin smiled at Naruto's antics and so did Sarutobi as the old ninja was getting used to the dragon's presence. Sasuke was livid as he realized that Naruto had gained a serious edge over him and that was painful to deal with. However, Aldrin spoke once more. However, wielder, I must caution you on several important matters concerning your ownership of Holy Talon. Just because you are the wielder doesn't mean you have free reign with the weapon. By the way, what happened to me anyway? Aldrin grinned once more as he already knew just what sort of topic Naruto was about to bring up. You speak of your sudden physical changes. Are they not to your liking? I had thought that a young, strapping lad like you would appreciate them. They will certainly help in getting attention from the opposite gender, and if you are lucky in more ways than one. Naruto blushed bright red at that, and Sarutobi coughed a bit as he admitted that with those new looks of his in a few years' time, Naruto would give even Kakashi a run for his money. Aldrin laughed gently and spoke. However, your physical changes are not merely for aesthetical purposes, wielder. In order for you to be able to utilize the full power of Holy Talon, your body had to adapt and change in order to handle the physical, martial, and mystical requirements of the powers of the Holy Talon. Normally such changes are subtle, but since you are quite young, they are now more pronounced. They will remain with you until you reach adulthood, which apparently will be far away from now. The physical changes will also help you in utilizing the essences of the previous dragon champions that you may summon to aid you, and also your dragon allies as well, though you will still need to train to master the higher level essences and spells, but as I have said before, you do not have free reign with a weapon. What do you mean by that? As it is a weapon of justice and is alive, it has the gift of sensing the auras of those around it, and it could read hearts, souls, minds, and natures the same way you would read a book. As such, it will not wound or kill those who have committed no crimes, who are innocent of any wrongdoing, and are of pure hearts, natures, and souls. As such, the weapon will not be used to kill or murder innocent lives, no matter how much the wielder may force it. It may cut armor and clothes, but never the flesh of the innocent and pure. If the wielder becomes corrupted, then the Holy Talon will disown the owner and fade away to be found by another. Of course, it will kill those who are evil instantly. Another limitation is the fact that its powers, while immense, are not limitless. When the magic of the sword is drained in a great fashion, it will take time to recharge its reserves. That also goes for the essences of the dragon champions who reside in the sword. Once that happens, depending on the drain, the Holy Talon will not be able to create spells or summon at all. It will retain its martial and physical qualities, but its mystical powers will take time. You might noted that some of your comrades couldn't lift the sword when you handed it to them. That is a build-in defense for the Holy Talon. If the ones who hold it are of pure and uncorrupted hearts, but not chosen by it, the weapon will become too heavy to lift, no matter how strong they may be. However, the reaction of Holy Talon to those of evil natures who try to take is another matter. Why? Let's just say it is a far from pleasant experience when they attempt to hold the sword. Are there other swords like Holy Talon? Yes, but this one was forged by the Chaos Dragons and their leader Chorvax, who used one of his fangs and scales for the process, and like us, he and his kin imbued their blood, portions of their power, their martial and physical powers into the sword, and when it was also finished in 4 years, Chorvax blessed it with his own powers, and he too placed this weapon in their most sacred place. For mortals who worship them to find. Those who were able to find that sword were also blessed with the title of Dragon Champion when the sword chose them to wield it, and like the Holy Talon, the sword forged by the Chaos Dragons was known by another mortal named Death Fang. That Fang possessed the same level of power as Holy Talon, but is imbued with dark energies and is corruption incarnate, wielding dark magic and evil energy. Like Holy Talon, it too can contain and release the essence of the previous dragon champions who wielded in generations past, allowing the current wielder to have the powers, skills, and abilities of those who used it before. But it is filled with hatred, malice, greed, corruption, anger, bloodlust, the desire to kill, subjugate, and dominate all life. That Fang therefore does not make distinctions on its victims, it will kill anyone, regardless if they are good, evil, or innocent. All it does is obey the order of its wielder to kill without mercy. And as such its wielder revels in death, bloodshed and warfare, becoming a merciless berserker. Years before, the last dragon champions who wielded both Holy Talon and Death Fang fought in Dragon's Basin, a large rocky valley, and in the end of the battle, the swords were sent far away by a maelstrom of magic, and judging by the fact you wield the Holy Talon, then both swords are here in your world. If that is the case, then you must be ready wielder, for there will come a time that one from this world will meet the needs of Death Fang, and when that happens, the Chaos Dragon Champion will arise and seek you out. When it does happen, you must be ready. Naruto gulped when he realized that there was such another sword in existence here on his world, and that if it was ever found and chose a wielder, then everything was going to change, and certainly not for the better. But he was not going to back down, his way of the ninja would not allow it. He smiled and nodded. "Don't you worry about a thing, Faldrin. I will be ready. Whoever finds Death Fang will soon know they will be facing the new Hokage of Konoha and the new dragon champion. Believe it." Faldrin smiled as he looked at the boy. "You have spirit now, only time will tell if you have what it takes to face your new destiny as dragon champion. Now I must leave, my time in the material plane is at an end. If you need my help, and I am up to it, then call on me when you can." With that, the Dragon Lord glowed once more, and in the same way he arrived, he left the two standing there. Naruto blinked and then walked over to Holy Talon and reached out and grasped its handle and took out the sword as Sarutobi walked over and patted his hand on Naruto's head. "It seems you have a long road ahead of you, Naruto, and I think you should be getting ready." "I will be more than ready, old man. Believe it." "Same old kid as before. You had better head back to the village. I have a feeling your team might need your help, but do not mention this meeting to them for now until you trust them well enough to do this again. I doubt they are ready to meet a Dragon Lord, and neither was I for sure. Got it, old man, see you later." As Naruto moved on after sheathing his sword, he decided to look for Sakura and Sasuke, hoping to find them and see just what sort of missions they might get soon. He then got into a conversation with Holy Talon and asked him if there were some essences he could use for a moment. And he asked the Holy Talon if he could get some better fitting clothes. The voice of the sword spoke and requested just what sort of clothes did Naruto want. Unknown to Naruto, Sasuke, who had witnessed everything, left the hiding place he had and walked back, trying to look indifferent, but his mind was in fact reeling from what he had learned. He tried to contain himself and focus on the task at hand as he decided to find Sakura. Later. "Please let him go. He's just a kid and it was an accident." Sakura tried to reason with a young man who had grabbed Konohamaru by the throat. The young grandson of the third Hokage was currently playing with his two friends when they met Sakura, since Konohamaru had been told just to his rival for the title of Hokage, and friend Naruto was working with. He asked Sakura if she was Naruto's friend. This got Sakura's attention and she couldn't respond. Normally before Naruto's sudden makeover, she would have denied it and said that she worked only with Sasuke. But since Naruto's changes, she couldn't help but have strange thoughts in her mind, and despite her thoughts, she blushed a bit as she recalled Naruto's new look that was naturally misinterpreted by Konohamaru, and he asked if Sakura was Naruto's girlfriend. Naturally, Sakura didn't take too kindly to that and attacked Konohamaru, and she chased them around, and they ran into the two. One of them was dressed in black clothes and a hood and seemed to have something on his back wrapped in bandages. He also had purple paint on his face in a set pattern, like the ones worn by actors, and he currently was the one who grabbed Konohamaru by the throat. The other one was a blonde girl who had her hair in four short tails of some sort and had deep green eyes, and she appeared to be dressed in a different fashion from the male and seemed to carry a massive metal object that resembled a triangle of some sort. "She does have a point, let the kid go. We're not here to be picking fights with children of all things." "No can do, this kid ran into me and I'm going to make sure he's going to regret pissing me off." Konohamaru's comrades, who were Mogi and Yuden, were very afraid, and Sakura didn't know what to do. From the way the two moved, she could tell that they were skilled, and it didn't take very long for her to know just who they are. They appeared to be genin and from the land of wind as well. "What's going on here?" Sakura looked at. There was Sasuke, who was carrying a pebble. "Sasuke-kun. Help us, he's going to hurt Konohamaru." Sasuke knew who that was and moved forward and tossed up a small pebble up and down, and he spoke to the genin who still held Konohamaru. "You might want to consider releasing the boy." "No can do, I'm going to break this kid's body and make him really regret hitting me." The blonde looked at Sasuke and smiled a bit with a slight reddening on her face. Well, it seems the local cutie showed up. However, just as Sasuke was going to deal with the new arrival, a whistling sound was heard and Sasuke felt something coming at high speed and then dodged aside, and when he looked he heard a deep biting strike on earth, and when he looked, there was a sword buried in front of the ground before the one holding up Konohamaru, and he quickly recognized it. The Holy Talon. What the heck is? Before the one holding Konohamaru could finish his question, the sword disappeared and he then felt something under the tip of his chin. The moment he looked, the sword was poised right at his throat, and when he followed it, the sword was being held by someone in one hand. He followed the weapon and found himself staring at none other than Naruto Uzumaki, who was looking at him with controlled fury. The blonde ninja was now wearing a muscle shirt that was deep black with an orange vest with black and blue trim, and apart from the swirl on the left side of the vest, there was a metal dragon on the right, along with the symbol of Konoha being surrounded by a dragon. His left arm was covered by the long sleeves, and his right forearm was not covered, therefore his silver dragon tattoo, that showed his status as Holy Talon's wielder, was exposed. He was also wearing black pants that had flame patterns in orange, with his kunai pouch and his shuriken pouch as well, and he wore dark black sandals as well. He still had his Konoha forehead protector as well. That was the only part of his clothes that was the same as the clothes he normally wore. Boss. Naruto. Naruto didn't answer and pushed the blade forward, barely touching the skin and cutting it, but he made his threat very clear to the one holding his friend. You had better let go of Konohamaru right now unless you want me to drive this sword right into your skull. The blonde girl with the four tails took a very good look at Naruto and noted his features, namely the eyes, the face, the blonde hair and silver highlights. She also noted the muscles that were being shown by the tight muscle shirt and pants, and despite the tenseness of the situation, she couldn't help but blush in a deeper shade of red as she took in Naruto's features. Scratch that, this new guy's not cute, he's smoking hot. I didn't know the Konoha had such hot guys. The blonde girl wasn't the only one affected as Mogi blushed bright red and had hearts in her eyes, and even though Sakura tried to hide her own reaction, the new look Naruto had certainly added more power to his new features. Naruto turned and looked at his friend, but only at the corner of his eye, as he kept his eyes pinned on the one who had the grandson of Sarutobi in his grip. You okay, Konohamaru? I'm fine, boss, that was so cool. You've really got to show me that move someday. Naruto grinned a bit, but that faded as he looked his dragon-influenced gaze at the one before him, making the normally arrogant guy move back a step, much to Sakura's surprise, Konohamaru's admiration, Yuten and Mogi's awe and Sasuke's indifferent look. With that, Naruto relaxed his stance and pulled Holy Talon back, but only for an inch. You've got some guts to be holding my friend in that way. Who the hell are you two, and what are you doing here in Konoha? I don't answer that, brat, I'll take you out right now. But that the dark-dressed boy reached out for that object he had on the back of his body and placed it down hard, forcing Naruto to take a defensive stance with the sword placed backward in level height of his head for a swipe or a block and in a two-handed grip. What? You're using Karasu here. Naruto, however, was not going to back down as he relaxed his grip, so to control his sword more, however, before things could get underway, he sensed a great deal of killing intent, much greater than normal around the level of Zabuza as well, and then he heard a voice. Pankuru, what are you doing? The people turned and so did Naruto, and he spotted a strangely dressed boy with what appeared to be a forehead protector like the other two, but unlike the blonde girl and the dark-clothed guy, he carried what appeared to be an entire gourd of sand. He had dark red hair, a character on his forehead that spelled love, and deep green blue eyes as well. There seemed to be markings underneath the eyes and surrounded the eyes as well, almost like a mask of some sort. He was using the tree walking technique to look down on the whole thing. Naruto didn't like the feeling he was getting from this guy and looked at the other two as the new arrival spoke. You're an embarrassment to our village with that reckless action of yours. The girl seemed to be in panic, and the guy with the bandaged wrapped object seemed to become very afraid for some reason, as was evidenced by his voice and response to the new arrival. Oh hi G Gaara. Sasuke looked at Gaara and was impressed. That guy moved real fast and so silently, only jonin like Kakashi are that skilled, yet he seems to be a genin. The new arrival, whose name was Gaara, then directed his gaze at Sasuke and then at Naruto, which the genin and dragon champion returned in the same serious fashion. Who's this guy? He's different but has the same symbol as the other two, and what's with that gourd? The blonde one with the suit and sword, he moved very fast, this guy needs to be watched. Back at Hokage Tower. Sarutobi looked at all the assembled jonin, including Kakashi, along with the other jonin, and Chunin as well. The Hokage knew the three he was about to call forward, Kakashi and two others, his son Sarutobi Asuma, and the resident Jinjutsu specialist Yuhi Kurenai. They were here to choose to have their respective teams, which included Naruto's classmates, to take the Chunin exams. You all know you were all called here, as you see the rest of your fellow jonin are here as well. It's the time of the year already. I guess I forgot all about it. Saratobi Asuma sighed as he still had his cigarette in his mouth, though at the moment, it was not lighted. I take it that the other countries and villages had been notified. There were some of them who were in the village recently. Yuhi Kurenai looked on and asked the natural question. So, when does it begin? The Hokage looked at everyone in the chamber pointedly, and while he was still smoking his pipe, gave the answer to Yuhi Kurenai's question. The Chunin exams will begin exactly 1 week from now. That got a rise from Kakashi, as the timetable was certainly not the same as he recalled from the last time the Chunin exams were held. 1 week from now? That's cutting it a little close. The Hokage took out the pipe from his mouth and blew out a large cloud of smoke inside. He admitted that Kakashi had a point, but things were already in motion, and he certainly couldn't just change the whole thing. Even if he wanted to, there was a lot riding on today's Chunin exams, and it was make or break time. I'll be giving the official announcement 7 days from now. On the first day of the month of July, we will begin the selections for candidates for the Chunin exams. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow Freedom Guard for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.